like for example, if I wanted people to stick to the program and be glued to their seats for the whole show, I would probably say something like...
And those are the discussions, I think, that are happening, and they're much more palatable than should we ban this technology.
Right.
That is problematic in a number of ways. There are instances in which natural resource management agencies do ban certain technology. You can't go hunting with grenades or mount guns on drones and fly them around to shoot wild turkey.
Right.
There are waters where we can't have a barb on a hook or we can't use live bait. So there are some regulations that exist that are sort of gear focused.
Yeah.
But at this point, there's not really, a lot of the natural resource management agencies are sort of sitting back and saying, I'm not really sure what we should do about this yet.
We don't do that, right? We don't fish unless there's fish there. Call that good, bad, or ugly, I don't know, but it's changed the way we spend our time on the water. We probably spend more time on the water than we ever did before, but less time angling.
As you're fishing away, they're looking and looking. All they're doing is scanning and looking all day long. They're not fishing. Their concentration's not at casting. So they're just sucking in, they're sponging in all that information. And then all of a sudden, day after day after day, and all of a sudden they're going, hey, cast right over there. Perfect. Let it drop. Be ready. Boom.
This episode of Outdoor Journal Radio is brought to you in part by the Invasive Species Centre, protecting Canada's land and water from invasive species. Freedom Cruise Canada, rent the boat, own the memories. J&B Cycle and Marine, your home for all things power sports, boats, and equipment. And Sail, the ultimate destination for your outdoor adventures. Well, hello everybody. Welcome to the program Outdoor Journal Podcast. Outdoor Journal Radio Podcast actually would be the correct way to say it. I've noticed I'm shortening things up lately. Do you find that as the older you get or no? I get lazy. I don't want to do
I've been getting lazy a lot.
Well,
I will say that. I'm probably doing it vocally, verbally, physically, mentally. I'm probably doing it all because I'm a lazy son of a bitch if I can be.
He is Peter Bowman, who just made that statement.
Yes, that's correct.
Along with
Lazy Petey.
That's right. Bobo over there and Dean there, who's actually right over there right now. There you are, Dean Taylor, our producer of this wonderful program. I'm Angelo Bio. Thanks for joining us. Once again, a wonderful program, but when are they not wonderful? Can we look back? Can we look back and see when we've had a not so
we'd have
wonderful?
to look at the ratings, right? And if the audience was so nice as to give us ratings and the numbers and the listens and all that, and then we'd have to say, that wasn't such a great program, maybe.
Well, we maybe it needs to be a little more clickbaitish kind of stuff. Like, for example, if I wanted people to stick to the program and be glued to their seats for the whole show, I would probably say something like, and later on, kids, we have a little fish doc with the doc. Dr. Stephen Cooke will be joining us.
Give me a hell yeah.
That's right. Biology professor at Carleton University. Over 700 peer-reviewed papers. I can't even imagine... I'm trying to physically...
You can't even count to 700, can you?
Are you kidding me? I can't even imagine how big of a closet this guy's got with all these peer-reviewed papers.
That's right. That's right. A closet full of
he
paper.
was last with us on episode 131, and that was Should We Be Fishing in Hot Weather? You all remember that great episode. This time we have him on because... they just unveiled, actually, Dean, has it been published yet? Or?
By the time they hear this, it'll be published. At the time of recording this, it's unpublished.
Okay, so this is a
right
paper,
Right in the
another
cusp.
paper that Dr. Cooke is authoring, which is based on a number of studies throughout North America from other scientists, all regarding forward-facing sonar, the FFS.
The topic of the fishing world right now.
Everybody wants to talk about it. So I got you. Now you're going to have to stick and listen to the whole show.
A scientific perspective of it. I like this. This is going to be good.
The pros,
Can't
cons,
wait.
the do's and don'ts, you don't want to miss it. That's what you don't want to do.
That's right.
So he will be coming up very shortly. First, want to remind folks, Fishing Canada, the Fishing Canada store has got all of the new swag and the new goodies
Is that what they were asking you about right there?
That's what I was hoping he would wear today.
Oh, do I have one of those?
No, you don't.
Well, how the hell am I going to wear them if you guys don't give me one?
You could get a deal or something in the back there.
Deal?
Yeah.
Give me one. I'll wear it. Give me, I'll do it. Put a hat on me. I don't care.
You have almost every one of them. I'm surprised you don't have that one. That was,
you know what I don't have, and they're not on here, are the new Fish in Canada species.
You don't have one of those yet?
No, I have the older ones, but the new ones that are...
I don't even have the older ones. Any of the older ones. None.
What's the matter with this show? I mean, good God.
I think a guy after putting in 30 years of the company would get a species-specific hoodie.
You would think so, wouldn't you?
I would think so. I would think so. Look at what you got to look forward to, Dean. Hey, put in 60 years, you're going to get a hoodie. Because you don't get it at 30. I like that one. I'll take that one.
I'm sure you will.
How much is that going to cost me?
Well, go find out.
Okay, I've got to do it again. I got to go again.
All you have to do is go there.
Can I get a discount code?
Probably the same discount you got on that shirt that you're wearing, I would think.
Free shipping because I had to walk over there and pick it up myself.
By the way, I do understand that there's a deal going on right now where if you buy certain items, you get other items for half price or 20 off or 25 off or 50 off. It depends on the other item. Obviously, it's that time of year, right? When you need to go to be in the know. Let's put it that way. If you don't go, you won't know.
Ho, ho, ho.
And that's shop.fishandcanada.com, or you can go to fishandcanada.com and go through the front door like I always do. And go to the store button that's on the top banner, or ribbon, I guess you call it.
Whatever you want to call it.
A little listener feedback before we get on to the doc. This one comes to us from Sasquatch 365.
I've seen that. Has he done them before, Dean? You see
that every week.
I think he may have written before, yeah.
That sounds like, Sam Squanch, you know what I mean? It sounds very
I've never seen
familiar.
that before.
No?
I must have been ill that day. I was absent.
Maybe more than once, even.
Sasquatch 365 via Apple Podcast. He says, in response to, I'm saying he, I don't know that to be a fact.
True? Well, if you think Sasquatch, I mean, how many women would give themselves...
There's no female Sasquatch.
How many women would give themselves that nickname is what I'm saying. That's whoever this is...
I've known a few. I've known a few who would have been proud of that. Who would have been proud
being a Sasquatch every day of the year right there, right?
I don't know why I even said that. I have no idea why I said that. I take that back. I think
it's a guy. I'm going to say it's a guy.
All right.
I'm going to guess that.
Let's go with that.
365 is a guy.
Sasquatch 365 says, in response to our interview with Inspired Planet Productions, that was episode 142.
Well, you're good at remembering those numbers.
I am pretty good, aren't I?
I know. I remember Inspired Planet Productions, but
you would think at my age that I would start slipping.
Yeah, you start leaving things out like you do, like the J and B. You leave the and out, stuff like that. So see if you do that. I bet you wonder if that'll happen this episode. Okay, Dean, mark my words. Let's just keep an eye on that. Okay. Okay, go ahead.
Excellent episode, boys. Oh God,
it's one of those days, brother.
It's getting late in the year. It's getting towards the end of the year.
It is good. It's kind of beginning to look a lot like Christmas, my friend.
It is. Excellent episode, boys. He says, "What are you laughing at?" He goes on to say, "Thanks for introducing these amazing documentaries to us." And if you recall what he's referring to, the folks at Inspired Planet were on this program, Inspired Planet Productions, and they had this new camera with all kinds of great underwater footage. We had them on here, and we told you all about the amazing documentaries that they had produced. In fact, Sasquatch went on to say, I just watched all 3 documentaries, and I got to say the first 2 made me feel a little bit down.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah, all that doom and gloom, right? But episode 3 brought me back to feeling positive, and the footage was incredible. Of course, that's what we were ranting and raving about. The footage is unbelievable.
Yeah.
I can't believe that they actually discovered those sculpins.
Yeah,
no
kidding.
That was in episode
like
3, I
300 feet deep or something silly thing.
And the trout porn was amazing as well.
Yeah.
There's a little teaser for you. Trout porn was amazing as well. So
good point. Yeah, excellent. I'm glad that people they're listening, they're watching the podcast and listening and checking things out. Our suggestions.
Those are 3 good documentaries. We have to have them back on the show.
There's the trout porn right there. Little 4-way going on back there.
Yeah, we have to have them back on. Maybe they produce another one, Dean. We'll have to check them out.
Yeah.
Speaking of discovering interesting things, Conservation Corner brought to you by...
This would be a good one. Invasive Species Centre. This would be a good one for them to look into.
Can you imagine if they could spot one?
If they could follow those around and see the...
Wow, we're talking about, if you don't know by now, when we say Conservation Corner brought to you by Invasive Species Centre, there's a fish threatening our favorite species to fish, and that is a grass carp, the dreaded grass carp. One of 4 species of Asian carp. I didn't even know the other. What are the other 3? There's a question for you.
Was the buffalo one of them? No.
The big head.
Big head.
Silver.
The silver.
Oh man! Come on, see, I'm making it challenging now.
Well, we got one. He got the big head, and I got the silver.
You did not. You didn't get nothing.
Oh, the black.
You said buffalo.
The black carp.
I know. Buffalo. I was just buffaloing you. I was buffaloing you in the first one. Then I got the silver in there after that.
Anyways, the grass carp is the one we're talking about. It was introduced to the southern U.S. To control, of all things, aquatic plant growth.
Too many weeds. We got to get rid of the weeds.
But it makes sense. If you have
buy
too
a
much,
machine, buy a big cultivator. One of those
can't
stupid
do
things.
that. You can't be doing
They
that.
still do that to this day.
No, but you're destroying all kinds of other stuff doing that. Don't tell people to do that. We'll have to have a whole conservation
let's put grass carp in instead. That's a good
no,
plan.
but we're not. They did.
Yeah.
Now we're trying to keep them at bay. Right. Anyways, this critter can eat up to 40% of its body weight daily of vegetation. That's why they brought it in the first place in the U.S. I believe it was on the Mississippi River somewhere. Was it not, Dean?
MISSISSIPPI.
Yeah, it was in Illinois.
Yeah.
I think, right?
Sure. Let's go with that. That'll work too. Either one. But I do remember there was a big... In fact, I know you guys are going to think, oh, man, is he old? But I remember when this first happened because they got free due to flooding. And there was this big concern about where these grass carp would end up, just in the U.S., never mind in Canada.
You know what freaks me out? That's the same thing that happened with common carp. That's what we have common carp here. You
flooding,
think
high water levels.
You think they'd have got their lesson learned by that one, but obviously not.
Anyways, this critter is now knocking on the door. In fact, some of us believe, and in fact, if you listen to some of the scientists, that there is DNA evidence to prove that this little critter, the most wanted critter that's on the screen behind us, the grass carp, is in fact swimming in Canadian waters. Up until recently, we thought that had been taken care of with electronic dams and all kinds of stuff, but obviously that didn't quite work.
Boy, are they putting a lot of money to that, the U.S. too, eh? Oh my God. Billions.
The biggest concern for us, I mean, yeah, you could say it's just another fish, but because it eats so much vegetation, it wouldn't take long for it to, I'm not going to sound too doomy and gloomy, but maybe I should. It wouldn't take long to devastate some of the sport fishing opportunities that we have taken for granted here in this country, and that is,
That's correct.
whether it's bass or pike or muskie or walleye or bluegill, anything that you fish for, they all depend on vegetation. And when you have a critter that can consume up to 40% of its body weight every day of vegetation, it does not take long to deplete that.
And not just vegetation. I do believe they're zooplankton and everything, right? So I mean that takes care of the whole food list and all of our species that we go after, from salmon to, like Ann says, bass, muskie, walleye, etc.
Yep.
So
there's only one way to make sure that doesn't happen, or at least that we do our part, and that is to be vigilant. Make sure you inform yourself on the habitat that this fish likes, where it's apt to be found, and more importantly, what it looks like. Because if you don't know what it looks like, you can't identify it.
download the imagery.
Thank you.
Go to asiancarp.ca and download the pictures, put them in your phone, and have it on you every time you're on the water. And just and keep it in mind. If you get something that looks weird, hey, just a minute before I throw that fish back, take a look. Hey,
I'd love to catch one.
I'm not going to throw that fish back.
I'd
That's
love
one
to
of these
catch
things.
one.
I would too.
Yeah, I'd love to catch one. Just have a.
It's going to actually. It'd be an incidental. They won't bite a plastic worm. I don't think.
No.
Right. I doubt very much. But if you had trolling for walleye in
Just
Great
happened
Lakes
to-
and Lake Erie or something like that, and all of a sudden, boom, yeah,
Be interesting.
it would be. Imagine the excitement level.
It would be pretty
It would
cool.
be. I got to get them in the net. We got to get them out of this water.
But
you know what I mean?
you got to be able to identify it first
Right.
before you can.
Well,
have
I'm
that
saying you and I were out there. I think we've seen enough pictures of them. We'd know what it was.
Oh,
But
boy.
at boat side, don't screw it up, Pete. They get that net under
Oh,
them.
could you imagine that?
Oh, you
netting?
missed. You bumped them off. Oh, I'd cry.
Ooh, baby.
Yeah.
Anyways, check it out. Get yourself
AsianCarp.ca.
AsianCarp.ca. Okay.
Check it.
Now we go from one odd-looking critter to another. Oldest depictions of fishing discovered in Ice Age art. Dean, talk to us about this. What's going on?
This is my story to run through.
Yeah.
I do find this stuff interesting.
You do.
You do.
I
Well,
do.
then get us interested in
Okay,
this.
so
would
if
you?
you're watching, there's a picture of this thing behind the guys. It's very hard to see what it is from this picture, so we're
Oh,
going to
I
have it
see
on the
a fish.
website.
I see
Yeah.
a fish
And
there.
but this, more importantly, is this right here.
Yeah.
All these
So they figure
striations.
that all the striations on it are depictions that they netted the fish. So this is the oldest depiction they have of a fish being netted. So this was 15,800 years old. So it's like during the Ice Age, like the mammoths were around at this time. So this is the oldest depiction they ever had, which they also figure means it must have had like some sort of cultural significance, because usually people only depict art of things
Right.
that matter.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
So anyways, I thought it was kind of interesting. It's the oldest one they've ever found. It's in a cave with pictures of mammoths and wild horses and some other things that they used to hunt there.
Wow.
That's so awesome.
And then there's a bunch of other pictures in the article of like how they actually recreated the net in another study with like rope and some sticks and stuff that they thought
They
would
didn't
been
have
the-
rope back then.
They
What do you
made
mean
it out
rope?
of dried bark.
yeah. Twine. They make their
Dried
own
bark.
kind of.
Okay, it wasn't rope then. They just used bark strips or something,
Yeah.
right?
So all this is on the website, but
So let me just ask a question.
That's cool.
Are we saying that now we have proof that man back then was hunting fish for sustenance?
Yep.
Whereas before we didn't have proof, we just assumed?
they assumed it was part of the diet, and they didn't know how much of like a cultural significance it would have had, or if it would have just been like incidental.
Right.
People were scavenging fish or whatever they would find.
Spearing them in a creek or
Yeah.
something easy access. But this is a whole different level here. Mm-hmm. Wow.
That's interesting.
That's so
Yeah.
neat. That is so cool.
And where did this story come from?
It came from a journal called PLOS One.
Oh.
A catchy name, you know.
Huh. And we have this now on the news on our site. Is
This will be
that,
on fishingcanada.com with all
look
the,
at
all
us,
the
eh?
pictures.
Like we're not just fishing dudes.
No,
all right,
we're
let's be honest
scientists.
with it. This is
Scientists. Wow.
scientists, history. I mean,
and
geologists.
we went from the net behind you to LiveScope. That's the connection here.
And it's got the cone going. That's the traditional right there, going
Yeah.
down like a
and
cone.
perspective.
Actually, that's a great way to tell people about the way traditional works. That's exactly it right there. That one right there too.
Fishing has been in our lives since the beginning of time. Let's just say that.
That's right.
Fishing in one form
Not so
or another.
much of a sport back then as it is now. But
I'd like to know where the first person. And there's got to be some papers with that. Where was that first person who said, "You know what? I like eating these things. That's okay, and I love the taste of them, and they feed my family. But I want to go and just have fun with one of them. Tie one on the end of my rope and just wrestle around
We
the
have an
pond."
article on
Instead of the trapping.
fishingcanada.com about the history of catch and release that talks all about that.
Oh yeah?
We have another one up there. Yep.
No kidding.
Yep.
we must have missed that one. Ange and I must
How
have
the
missed
hell did that
one.
happen?
I wrote it. You guys probably didn't read it.
Oh wow! Was that a long time ago, Dave?
Long time ago,
Oh
yeah.
geez, can you
I've been waiting. It's been on your desk since
can
then.
you?
No doubt. It'll pass
He
by us
wrote
quick.
that, and I didn't even read it. I feel terrible now, Dean.
Yeah.
I'm going to take it home this week and read it. I
right.
promise you. If you make it available.
But I do like that on Ange, what Ange said there. There's that they've been trapping these fish. They're doing this
Killing,
and they're doing killing
eating.
and they're eating and all of a sudden they found a better way of an easier way. Maybe they still wanted to eat them and catch them. And they're throwing on this rope, but all of a sudden they're saying, "Wow, that's fun." You know?
There had to be some fun element.
Yeah, there had to
right?
be. This fish jumps, the tiger fish in Africa jumps out of the water or whatever like that.
Why you
tiger
all of a
fish.
sudden-
Tigerfish. I'm saying a crazy prehistoric-looking fish that jumps.
Okay.
That's what I'm saying. I'm just using that as an example.
All right. I'm just
sturgeon.
curious.
Sturgeon would be a better one.
Sturgeon.
You know, you're going to handline a sturgeon. Good luck with that, Chuck. Holy shit.
Anyways, interesting. It's all there on fishingcanada.com. Who knew, Dean, that one day we would be talking about stuff like this?
Geologists.
Yeah. I certainly didn't.
We're evolving.
We're evolving. Fan question of the week brought to you by fishfinder.com. Talking about evolving.
Excuse me. Say that again, please.
Fishfindermounts.com.
That's correct. Thank you.
I told you, I'm getting lazy.
You are.
Fish
You're
finder
getting good at it.
and clairvoyant too. You can see in the future.
I'm all over you, buddy. I'm going to correct you once more, at least in this show. At least once more, I'll guarantee it. It's just the way it's happening. I can see it. I can feel it evolving.
You're clairvoyant.
It's organic.
Fishfindermounts.com. Fishfindermounts.com. Because you could say that they've brought the art of mounting sonar screens, transducers. They brought it out of the dark ages.
Yeah.
Into
that's a good segue.
It is.
Like
it's a great segue.
I like that.
And they bring you the fan question of the week, which is, my friend.
Yeah, well, first off, let's say it's submitted by Daniel Haig Greenwood from British Columbia via email. Info@fishingcanada.com is our email address. That seems to be the way that everybody's doing it. So I don't even know if we should push out that Facebook. You can do it on Facebook or Instagram because it just seems like the old email address is the one that's killing it, right? So anyway, any one of those three would work. Question is, what should I look for in a fishing net? Pros and
fish.
You want fish in there. That's right. That's what you want. Pros and cons of mesh versus rubber. Does fish species make a difference, or is it personal preference? That's a great question.
See how I lined this up with the other net story?
Yeah.
Jeez. Lucky you said that because I wouldn't have got
that. That wasn't a coincidence, Steve.
No,
you actually thought that through.
Yeah.
Holy smokes.
All about netting.
Wow.
I don't know why they talk bad about you around here because I think you're doing a great job.
Thank you.
All right, stuff like that.
I'm starting
stuff
to believe
like
in it now. I had my doubts on Dean earlier, but after
stuff
today,
like that. How do you just come up with that? Just hook them right up. You're unreal. Pros and cons of mesh versus rubber. Well, I mean, the obvious is that rubber is less apt to take the slime coat off a fish.
Yeah,
that was the real reason
idea,
it was brought up, and it was. I think that was a bass fishing tournament thing where they wanted to have less damage, potential damage to the fish.
Because it's going to be catch and release.
Exactly.
So yeah. Definitely, your hooks, you won't get snagged in your rubber net as much as you will in a mesh net. That's for nylon mesh net. That's for sure. The hooks get tangled severely sometimes.
So there's two pros to rubber.
Yeah.
Do we have a con to the rubber?
Yes. I have a con to the rubber net. I use them all the time. Yeah. I have a little special bass net. It's trout bass size. I try to use that as much as I can, but the problem with them, they're never really deep nets. They're shallow nets. And if you had a bycatch, like a pike, and you wanted to take a pike home, or you want to net them, I'm going to take them home and eat them, whatever. I've had so many fish flip out of rubber nets. They just flip out because they're not deep enough. They sag down.
The basket isn't deep enough.
The basket isn't deep enough. That's right. So they make them kind of as compact as they possibly can. So it's very. But if you made it a nice big deep one, because the fish will sink into it even deeper when you lift it, because the rubber stretches. That's the only con I have of it. What stretches more? Go ahead. See how clairvoyant I am of you? I knew it. I am. God, I gotta give up, man. I know this guy too well. I gotta get out of here.
The other problem is that they stretch too much, and what I mean by that is sometimes you get, especially pike would be one fish. Sometimes walleye, they'll actually force their way through and stretch one of the openings and get through the other side.
They can definitely do that.
But we're really, I think we're reaching. Yeah. If we're looking at those as the cons.
Here's the way I'll give you my opinion. The way I choose a net. I like a rubber net for bass fishing for sure. I love a rubber net for bass fishing for sure. But when I start getting into bigger fish species, I tend to go to the nylon, the mesh type of nets. They're just like big walleye, the Bay of Quinte walleye, for instance. I would never use a rubber net on those late season big walleye. I want one with a big opening on it, a big hoop, and I want lots of water area mesh that I can have to scoop the fish, let it sit like a muskie net and a pike net. You want that fish. You notice the guys use the biggest, most ridiculous looking nets in the world, muskie anglers. They do that for a reason. Number one, you get that big 50-inch fish into that hoop. That's the easy advantage. Then that thing it's a big, deep net. It's a live well. They just sit there and they never pull that fish out of the water until the hooks are clear and all that. Then they pull it out for a quick measure or a quick picture, and then they throw the fish back. So the bigger the fish for me, the more apt I am to use nylon, bigger hoops, bigger nets.
So to answer the question then, because he does go on to say, does fish species make a difference?
Yes.
Absolutely.
I think so. Yes, absolutely.
All right, time for a little fish talk with the doc. This segment brought to you by Sail, the outdoor store.
Yes, sir.
It's your home for all things fishing, camping, hunting, clothing, footwear. I mean, you name it, they have got it.
Oh, we're there all the time. They must have it because we're there all the time.
A little too much, by the way. I saw the bill last month. I wasn't overly impressed.
I know, but
anyway.
We got a habit. We have to fix our habits every now and then. So.
If you don't have a Sail store near you, which is quite likely to happen, just go to sail.ca. That's their wonderful website. You can get all kinds of things there that they have in the stores, and you might even get 60% off on select items.
They have some great sales, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, and everything around it. So
I'd like to add them all up. I said that last podcast.
They'd be giving you money. You take a jacket and they'd give you money back.
That'd be nice. That'd be nice for a change.
Finally.
That's Sail. SAIL.ca. Now on for a little fish talk.
Yeah.
As promised at the beginning of the show, Dr. Stephen Cooke will join us now. He, for those of you who might not know, is a biology professor at Carleton University. He publishes all kinds of stuff. He has 700 peer-reviewed papers. We're going to add one to that list, I think, today.
Yes.
Because we're going to talk about a recent study that Stephen was part of, and he's going to discuss that has apparently not been published yet or is on the verge of being published. And it's all about forward-facing sonar, which has been the talk for the last couple of years. Mostly pros, but there are some cons with it.
Yeah.
What say ye, Stephen?
Hello, Stephen.
Hey, how are you?
We're good,
thanks,
buddy. We're
Yeah.
good.
So finally, we've got some science behind all of this craziness called forward-facing sonar that
which we knew was going to or it should have happened, right? Ange and I kept saying all the time that the biologists got to get on this game because it's telling us a lot. So I can imagine what they're going to be using it for. So finally.
All right, let's talk about this, Stephen. What have you discovered?
Okay, so what we did, poor me, I had to sit and type and basically do, head to the library, do a bunch of reading. And this study is a synthesis or a literature review. So we went out there and we found everything that was published, everything that was in the works, because this is so new. There's about as much work, that's been, it's sort of in the works that people are writing up, work that's underway. And so we got some insight from those, sort of some anecdotes from ongoing work, did some thinking, did some reading. We assembled a team that included fisheries managers that have to deal with this issue, folks from Canada, the US, and Australia that are wrestling with these issues. And so this paper is all that information brought together in one place.
You're like AI, Stephen AI. There it is, right there.
So before we get into it, so the pros obviously have been all about the wonderful technology that allows anglers now to see, real-time images that I know most novice anglers will say, well, I thought you guys always had that capability, and it's not
true.
Not the case,
they would
right?
think that probably.
So this whole new scanning system allows us to see things in real time. It gives us a whole different view, especially when you shift it to forward-facing sonar, whole different view of what we were accustomed to, and we've all been saying how wonderful it is. On the other side of that coin, people have been saying, you really don't need all that technology, and it's an unfair advantage to the fish. And, this is going to be the end of fishing as we know it, because you guys are going to go out there with all this new stuff, and you're going to catch all the fish, and I won't get any. That's kind of the game that is afoot right now. Is there anything that you've discovered that may give any truth to those comments at all, either way?
Yeah, I think it's fair to say that not everybody that uses this technology is the same. It is not cheap, and there's a steep learning curve. So there's a pretty big investment, both financially and time, that you have to put in to get good at it. And so I think for that reason alone, it will always be somewhat niche. It's not going to be the average angler that goes out, a handful of times across the year, or if they do, they're probably not going to be very good at using the technology. It's going to be those folks, fishing guides, tournament anglers, professionals that really can dig in and start to understand things. And those folks tend to be on the better, there's sort of this gradient of angling ability and expertise. And if you're a professional and a fishing guide, you can probably get on fish most days of the week with or without technology. So it's unclear how much of a game changer it's going to be relative to those folks that they're sort of dunking worms and, maybe they're really good at catching panfish, but probably aren't landing a whole bunch of steelhead or muskie. So.
To me, when you mentioned these guys, and I know definitely the tournament anglers have probably brought that to the forefront for sure, and they're very good at scoping. We call it live scoping, forward viewing, whatever. But the person that really would get a good advantage would be the fishing guides, as you mentioned, because those fishing guides are people that are listening here that have never had a fishing guide before. Normally, that person doesn't even fish. They're in the back of the boat, and they're just putting you in areas where they fish. Well, if they have a live scope on a pole right beside them, as you're fishing away, they're looking and looking. All they're doing is scanning and looking all day long. They're not fishing. Their concentration's not at casting. So they're just sucking in, they're sponging in all that information, and then all of a sudden, day after day after day, and all of a sudden they're going, hey, Angelo, cast right over there, right there, 30, no, bring it back in, perfect, let it drop, be ready, boom. You know what I mean? Those fishing guides would be the...
And then is that not the unfair advantage that some folks are talking about? Because take that same scenario, in years gone by, chances are pretty good that client would not have made contact with that fish because the guy didn't see it in the first place.
Yeah.
So maybe there's something there that would say it's an unfair advantage, but I don't understand the unfair part. We go out to recreate, whether I'm playing golf or tennis or whatever. I go out because I want to do well at it. Right, I don't want to go out golfing with my buddies, and
you don't hire a fishing guide and not catch fish.
Well, that's it.
You know what I mean? You're going out to go
I
fish.
have a hard time understanding those comments about unfair advantage. At the end of the day, from what I've read on your stuff, Stephen, the guy still has to catch fish, put it in the boat.
Absolutely,
right?
Yeah.
Seeing that fish is wonderful, and I'll tell you what it's done for us. We probably fish less today than we did, say, 5 years ago. What I mean by that is we spend less time fishing and more time searching, watching, and learning.
Yeah.
So we actually spend less time at it than before, but when we do, we generally catch more fish. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I think the best anglers are those that understand the relationships between the environment and fish. And this is another tool that allows us to do that. In fact, if you think back, this technology has partly come out of the military realm, but it's also come out of the research realm. This is work that's been used to map different habitats, seafloor in the Arctic and so on, and to be able to bring that into your boat, and instead of just simply looking at a nav chart that says, hey, there's a rock pile over there, you can see that pile in great detail. You can see how the fish are relating to that or other things. Maybe it's the thermocline. Maybe it's where a tributary is flowing in, and you can see sort of where that the murky water perhaps that's coming in from that tributary and where fish are holding to that. And I've always argued that the way to get better at fishing is more time on the water, but that's really just more time observing those interactions. So if this speeds up that process so that you can learn about habitat better, I think eventually it'll help people become better anglers more quickly if they're able to put in the time and really get to know the technology.
Especially younger kids who are getting into fishing, because the older people like us, I'll tell you right now, and you're probably experiencing this, Steve, as well. It's a real learning process. Okay, if you think you could just go out and spend a couple of $1,000 and put this equipment on your boat, and all of a sudden you've upped your game. Boy, you got a long way, because the learning process is really steep for us. Now, having said that, I can see a 17, 18-year-old kid getting his first forward-facing or just scoping equipment to start with, and he would just jump on it like that.
Yep.
Whereas it takes us forever just to figure out what buttons do what.
The other advantage the kids would have nowadays is they'd be watching all this footage on YouTube. We never had that when this first came out, right? And now they're seeing these screens and they're seeing what it looks like. So when Ange and I first got LiveScope, when it first came out, we thought, what the hell is this? You know what I mean? We kept turning back to the traditional side, and we kept turning, like, not looking at it at all. I think the first season, we turn it on and try, and turn it on and try, and then turn it off. You know what I mean?
And we were too embarrassed to tell anybody that we didn't
know how to
use it. So we'd say, "Oh yeah, it's great, man.
Awesome
it's really,
stuff.
it's great.
Get out there, buy it. Come on." But after using it for a couple of months and then this winter went along, I said, okay, we got to get good at this. And then we just started bearing down and working at it. And now I say we're pretty efficient at it now. So, and it's fun too. It is fun.
It's a blast. It's changed our fishing lives completely. Just as a side note, it must be changing the scientific community's fishing lives as well, I would think, especially you guys, more than anybody else, because most of your work is trying to figure out how fish react to various things. And before, without having eyes underwater, it must have been really tough. Now, you can literally see how a fish relates to a piece of structure, or better yet, current, or temperature changes, or light changes. Like, it's got to be a game changer for you guys.
What would you be looking for, Stephen? What would scientists, when they finally mounted on live viewing, what would you guys be looking for as compared to anglers, let's say?
Right. So I'm very much interested in helping managers do their job better, and protecting habitat is job number one of most of our fisheries managers in Canada. If we don't have good habitat, if that's not protected, then we've got nothing to fish for. And so what this does is it helps us make those connections, exact same connections that you were making when you're out in the water as an angler, but being able to do that quantitatively. So normally what we would have done in the past is brought animals into the lab and put them in tanks and given them, you guys get rock substrate, and you guys get sand, and you guys get silt, and see which ones they prefer and which ones they do better in. We can go out in nature. We can throw on a mask and a snorkel, or deploy an ROV, but that's really short term. And the fish tend to react to it. They see that there's something down there. They turn and look at us when we're snorkeling. They look at the ROV and start following it around, whereas the sonar allows us to really get an idea of what the fish are doing without them knowing that we are there. And that's the real benefit.
Yeah, I can tell you, I think in the last couple of years, there have been at least 2 or 3 episodes. One is going to be coming up this January, where had we not had this technology on the boat, we would not have had an episode, period. Yep. And I'm thinking the lake trout on Temagami.
Both lake trouts.
Both lake trout episodes.
One Dean did too.
Yeah. We would not have caught, we didn't even know those fish were there, let alone that they're catchable. So it does change things, but I do also want to caution folks, just as you're doing now, and especially with the study, is that it is not the game changer that most anglers will experience, because you have to have a certain level already in order to take advantage of it. It's just not something you can bolt on your boat and say, okay, let's go out and catch them, right? So obviously this study talks to that. I know there's some geographical differences of results that you've got in your study, and I wonder why that would be. I know there's some jurisdictions where you've definitely seeing an uptick on the catches, and others where it makes no difference at all. What do you attribute that to, Stephen?
Yeah, when you really drill into a lot of those studies, there's still so few of them. There's always other differences than just where they've been done. Oftentimes what they'll do is they'll set up boats and they'll put anglers of equal ability in a boat that has the sonar and another boat that doesn't. And they'll compare compare those. Or in another study, they'll have the experts, and then they'll have somebody that's out there in the rowboat, and they'll compare their catches. And not surprisingly, in that latter case, they're quite different because, the pros know how to, they've got the equipment, they know how to use it, and they're already catching more fish. When you put people head to head that are frankly, poor to maybe okay with the technology, it doesn't seem to make a whole lot of difference. So you really, really have to truly understand its power and its and how to use it, how to interpret it, to get anything meaningful out of it. I was out with John Anderson, a muskie guide on the Ottawa River last fall, and I remember him showing us big fish swimming around. I was like, oh my God, I got to cast over there. And he's like, nope, that's a sturgeon. And I'm like, no, it's a huge one, and sure enough, he was able to point out the fins, the archetype of the fish, where you could clearly see that it was a sturgeon. And then of course I'm fixated. I love sturgeon, and I wasn't going to catch any with a big muskie spinner, but watching those animals on screen, checking them out. So again, going back to how we'll be able to use this for rare or endangered fish that we, if we don't have to catch them, it's a great tool as well.
I was going to ask you of all of the studies that you've looked into so far, was there a lot of, they're getting so technical now that guys can tell the difference between species and fish. Obviously a long and lean sturgeon and a muskie of the same length, it'd be pretty hard to tell the difference unless you're really trained. But is the average angler getting better at IDing species now because it's still hard for me, I think it answers as well. Bass is a bass. You can't tell a largemouth from a smallmouth. There's no way you can. But sometimes you can tell a largemouth from a walleye, but sometimes you can't. So it fools us.
Yeah, this is certainly getting better, but I think we're relying on our intuition. For example, if you're, in the middle of Lake Simcoe, and you're fishing in 30 feet of water and there's a rock pile, you're probably going to be fishing smallies if you see a cloud of fish under there. Right. So I think we make inferences as, we pull upon other knowledge sources that we have. And so I haven't seen much evidence of that. The same thing while ice fishing. Oh, there's a cloud of fish. And maybe you can tell crappie from a yellow perch, that kind of thing, because their body shapes are so different. Right. But those might also be a big school of bluegill. I don't think we're at the point, I'm not sure we ever will, where we're going to be able to tell fish, as you said, a smallmouth from a largemouth without making guesses based on the general habitats where we're fishing.
I'll tell you one of the greatest, I think, results that we've had, because it's in areas where we normally would not spend a lot of time fishing, and that is open water. Forward-facing sonar has changed that game completely to the point, and you maybe can agree or disagree on this, Dr. Cooke. We now think that at any given time on any given body of water, any species of fish can be found either deep or shallow. Meaning before, it was traditionally thought that, say bass, for example, smallmouth bass. If you want to have a great day fishing smallmouth, well, you got to be from shore out to maximum 20 feet. They're going to be somewhere roaming around there. So I'm going to invest most of my time fishing in those areas. Well, we've since discovered that while that may be good and while that may be productive, turn the boat around and look the other way, because there's an equal amount of opportunities sitting out there in open water with feeding fish. So what we've discovered is that it's a whole lot easier to catch feeding fish than it is trying to catch fish that are hunkered down behind a rock or underneath a piece of wood or right in the thickest weed, edge that you can find. They may be a little more difficult to coax out of that mode that they're in. But those guys out there in open water that are just chowing down on bait balls all over the place, they're a whole different ballgame. And that's the biggest difference, I think, that we've noticed with this technology.
To expand on what Ange is saying, the average angler is that shoreline to 20 foot.
Yes.
Those fish are pressured. those ones out there haven't even seen a lure. So not only are they eating and hungry, they haven't seen any pressure at all. So there's a big advantage to that one too. So yeah, it's huge. It's opened our eyes up. It happened again this year at Obabaca was when Dean and I and Steve were out, and Dean was on lake trout, and all of a sudden here's these smallmouth out in 90 feet of water just coming right up to the boat. Like, what the hell, dude?
Who has ever fished them before?
Yeah, exactly. So craziness.
It's more fishable water, and that may in fact spread pressure out, which isn't a bad thing.
No, that's positive.
I know you guys like fishing lily pads and the slop as well. That stuff gets hammered because we know bass live there. So if half the guys are looking for them in the other direction, it takes a bit of the pressure off. The challenge, of course, is that and I think, we all love a good shore lunch, but we also make good decisions as responsible anglers. If somebody's really harvest oriented, it does provide the opportunity for really hammering fish and doing it very, very quickly.
Absolutely.
So,
and once again, we'll go back to guides. This tool, I think, if any angling group stands to get the most benefit out of it, it is guiding. Because you just mentioned, these guides go out there, and when it's shoreline or shore lunch time, they've got to have fish in the boat for shore lunch.
Yeah, they got to produce.
This tool would be perfect and is perfect for them, and it's paying big dividends for sure. For sure.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. You got to. Can I go just expand on that a little bit more? It might go to the point, and this I'd have no problem with this at all myself, but maybe some people, the catch and keep and kill and eat people all the time, will have a problem with that. But if forward facing is so effective that it's getting more popular and more popular, then the MNRs of the areas, the DNRs, are going to have to start cutting back the limits a little more then. You know what I mean?
Well, it'll help scientists
That's
like
what I'm
Stephen
saying. That'll
determine.
keep the population.
Right.
Oh, you know what? Now, some people that don't have it are going to be pissed off because, you LiveScopers got our limit dropped down. But honestly, it's all about the fish, right? It's so I mean, your 30 crappie limit per person now goes down to a 20. You know what I mean? Or something like that. Or bass. Bass is a perfect example. They're the ones that are the most looked at and most used for live scoping. We don't need to keep 6 bass per person. So you, me, and Stephen and Dean go out, that's 24 bass. We don't need to keep 24 bass. And you know what I mean? So maybe knock that down to 4 fish per person or 3 fish per person. So I don't know. I just, maybe that's what it'll come to. But then our ministries are going to have to look into that, right? And use a science against it.
Exactly. And those are the discussions, I think, that are happening. And they're much more palatable than should we ban this technology?
Right.
That is problematic in a number of ways. There are instances in which natural resource management agencies do ban certain technology. You can't go hunting with grenades or mount guns on drones and fly them around to shoot wild turkey.
Right.
There are waters where we can't have a barb on a hook or we can't use live bait. So there are some regulations that exist that are sort of gear focused. But I think that this is one where if pressure as a whole increases, harvest pressure, then you could either do targeted regulation. So if that is on the vessel you're using, then that cuts... then then you have a reduced limit relative to a vessel that doesn't. But at this point, there's not really, a lot of the natural resource management agencies are sort of sitting back and saying, I'm not really sure what we should do about this yet. There was a couple months ago, the American Sport Fishing Association put on a webinar that I attended, and I actually sent a copy of this to every participant afterwards. There were about 150 folks on there, and including most of the fish chiefs from the U.S. states, a couple Canadian representatives, lots of industry folks, and tournament reps, and so on. So a lot of people are thinking about this, but at the same time, there's not a whole lot of action in terms of change. Where we've seen that is the bass tournament scene. And we've seen 3 very different responses. It was sort of late August, early September. We actually had to update our paper. The paper had already been accepted, and we were musing about what might happen. And we updated it to say, hey, this is what actually happened. And so I think there were some really creative solutions in there.
What do you think about that? Your personal opinion. What do you think about tournaments that are starting to control the use of this technology and in some cases eliminate it completely. What's your personal opinion? You're an angler. I'm talking to you as an angler. What's your personal opinion of that?
I like some of the changes. There's some changes that are purported to be for safety. I can't speak to the, to the extent to how much view is disrupted by screens at different heights of different angles. But safety has been used as a premise for limiting screen size or screen volume on the front of a boat. And if indeed that is an issue, then that seems lofty. Just like we don't want drunks out driving boats around, we don't want people with obstructed views. So that's, I think a reasonable reason to think about limiting the amount of hardware. You don't want a 72-inch screen mounted on the front of your boat. That's problematic. So,
well, you want that. We just don't want people to drive around with that.
I could use one of those.
Oh God, that'd be so cool. Anyway.
But I like the idea that I think it was MLF has days where you basically can fish one day with and one day without, or going to waters where it probably isn't going to help you. So, a really shallow weed-choked water body, it's not going to do a lot of good for anybody. You're just going to keep seeing, just nothing but a wall of weeds. So I like the idea of mixing it up. I like seeing people catch fish. I less like watching somebody motor around in the middle of a lake looking for those fish to catch. I can watch that in a 5-minute highlight reel, whereas watching someone chuck frogs over lily pads, I can watch that all day because you never know when something's going to explode. And I think the anglers tell you a lot more too when they're fishing. I feel like they're more talkative when they're actually fishing as opposed to searching. They're so focused on the screen there. It's not as in my perspective is they aren't as talkative. So I'm less likely to watch that kind of fishing as well. So so I like the changes. I also like that they all did something different. And so if a tournament angler feels really strongly, or if a viewer feels really strongly, there are options out there. If you don't like what MLF did, you can look at what BAS did or vice versa. And there's another smaller organization.
NPFL.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So you can sort of shift around based on where your interests are. So yeah, that's my take.
Yeah, it's interesting. I don't know where it's all going to end up. I'm hoping that much like the conversation we had a few minutes ago, where novice anglers will use it as an opportunity to grow into the sport and get better at their fishing by using this technology. It will, listen, if we had that closed mind approach to using technology in fishing, we'd still be holding on to a branch with a string on it and a piece of steel for a hook. Everything that we look at in fishing, it's all evolved through technology, whether it's fishing line, whether it's rods and reels.
We just talked about going to the sales store. Going that upstairs to that sales store, you're going to see technology at its best there. Everything is.
So this is not unique, but it's the first one that's really caught the headlines about it being sort of an unfair advantage to whoever, I don't know, maybe unfair to the fish, possibly, I don't know. But that's kind of the headlines that we've seen in this one. I don't recall, when graphite was first used in fishing rods, which, by the way, I think was one of the biggest breakthroughs that we very seldom talk about today. The difference between using a full glass rod versus a graphite rod back in the 70s. It was night and day. And don't tell me for 1 minute that there was not an advantage to anglers who were using graphite versus the latter.
Absolutely.
So it's really no different. But this one is kind of, it's bigger. It's more glamorous. It's
also bigger, though, because of the unaffordability of it.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Graphite rods, they were unaffordable. They were.
Yeah, but it wasn't thousands. It was, it was $100, versus whatever. So maybe that's part of it too. Is those that can't afford it, are right pissed off, and they don't, they know they never will afford it or whatever. That might be. I'm not sure, but that's one of the things I'm thinking it might be.
Well, I think this stuff's going to come down in prices as time goes by too. Right? It's like anything else. Right now, we're paying for that research and development of this technology, and so we are paying for it as anglers. But I think in time that price will. I mean, it's just chips, right? It's chips and wiring. The prices have got to come down at some point. But,
Yep. There are a couple interesting examples. One is paddlefish. So for folks that don't know about paddlefish, really common fish sort of in central Midwest. So if you go down, say, in Missouri area or southern Illinois, there's decent numbers of them in big rivers and reservoirs. So in other words, dammed rivers. And they are planktivores, kind of like the freshwater whale shark, right? They just swim around with their mouths open and they filter feed. There's just a lot going in. They just take in a lot of water. And so there's legal snagging fisheries. I know in Canada, we're not used to snagging, but that's how you catch paddlefish. And so traditionally it was either blind snagging, or you would go out with, a traditional fish finder, and you'd find a cloud of fish that are big and hope they're there, and, bring your jigging spoon to the right depth and jig away. But again, it's truly snagging. They're not taking swipes at it. So, and again, legal where it's legal to do so. The issue now is that it's very easy to snag.
No kidding.
Paddlefish.
No kidding.
So I think there's going to be examples of where there will need to be regulations that are very, very context specific. People eat paddlefish, they smoke paddlefish, and the paddlefish are getting smoked right now by folks that are using sonar. And so that's an example of a very specific, very specialized fishery where I would anticipate some regulations to ensure that we have paddlefish for tomorrow. But I'm unaware of any similar examples or unique species in Canada where we're starting to really think about this. That's or frankly, any other species. It's a very, very unique circumstance that probably merits some attention.
There's been a lot of, sorry, Angela.
Didn't even know that existed.
Yeah, I
That's
didn't
a whole
either.
Other fishery,
There's been a lot of talk in the muskie world. As to now, people are sitting there, and they're out in the open water, as Angela's talking about, their open water, and boom, there she is. It looks like a 48-incher, and they had never known it was there before, and now they just follow it around, follow it for hours and doing that. There's been a controversial talk about that, and that does sound like a legit argument there for sure, that you're just on that fish and staying on that fish until it bites or it doesn't bite. But
you're harassing it.
But yeah,
basically.
you're basically kind of harassing it.
And that could be a valid point too. I mean,
it's.
I don't think we're anywhere near the end of this story. It's going to be ongoing, and especially now that there are papers that people can follow and read, I think it's going to open up a lot more in terms of studies, and maybe it'll educate us all a lot more too, just knowing. Mm-hmm. For example, and I don't know whether you guys have even thought about this yet, and I'm talking to the scientific community, I'd love to see a study on how the fish is affected by the signal. Because I have a belief in it, in that the fish senses these signals, and I think the fish in time can make adjustments to these signals, which means we are going to have to adjust ourselves as well on how we use this technology. The manufacturers of this technology are frantically working on that as we speak to change the way those frequencies are put out by these units, because it's like anything else. Stephen, you're of the age, well, you remember, you used to be able to catch as many smallmouth bass in the Kingston area of Lake Ontario as you possibly could ever want on a white spinnerbait. Well, there was a period of time that you would not even get a sniff on a white spinnerbait anymore, because these fish had however they'd evolved to know that color, that sound, the frequency of that spinner, whatever the case was, it just isn't going to do it anymore.
Yeah, that's not food.
Right, it's not food. So get away. In fact, not only is it not food, but it's going to harm us, so run the other way. The sonar manufacturers are going to have to deal with that as time goes on. We've been in lakes where we've known that there's been a lot of pressure from elite anglers with forward-facing sonar, where the fish would definitely react farther away than normal, react to the signal, meaning you could see that they were put off by it. Is there anything in the works on studying that element here?
Not that I'm aware of, and I'm not going to pretend I know the sensory physiology space well enough to tell you what's known or not, just more broadly about fish and these signals. We certainly know that some marine mammals are obviously quite sensitive to certain frequencies and so on. And there's restrictions as well. You can't just go out and invent something on any and all frequencies. The military and government sort of control the frequencies that you have access to when blasting signals into the environment. So it's certainly something to keep our eye on. The other thing, though, is also boats that are, they're used to, boats zooming overhead,
right?
But maybe a little less so, what's it look like to be, 40 feet down and looking up at a boat on, in clear water. What does that trolling motor sound like? So there's other cues that they may become accustomed with that they decide that they don't like. It may not be just the forward-facing sonar, or it may not even be the forward-facing sonar, because we're fishing. It's new fishable water, and we're fishing it differently. There would have been, there's always the odd boat that historically, we would have seen that boat out there, and we'd be like, oh, those morons don't know what they're doing. Or you would have seen, there's some people that just like to troll, and they spend their whole day just trolling around cleaning lures.
Right.
And on occasion, you get lucky when you're trolling, if even when you don't know what you're doing. So those fish would have been encountered on occasion, but pretty rarely. Whereas now, multiple boats sort of hovering, following, you can imagine quickly how that might be something that the fish learn to dislike and avoid. And what does that mean? Who knows? It may mean just getting smarter and they continue to do their same thing. Maybe they'll go deeper. Maybe they'll go back in shallow. Who knows? So that'll keep us guessing, won't it?
Yeah. When Ange and I talked to some Garmin, I guess they're techs or technicians, yeah. And we asked them in the last summer, if they were looking into this technology, because it's a big thing about that. And they said, not really yet, guys. We haven't really dug into it yet. But they didn't say, no, we're not going to.
No.
But they didn't, and I mean, because it could be a detriment, right? If the sonar company comes up with, oh my God, the fish are feeling all our stuff here, you put that out to everybody, that's not good. But in the same sense, if it was a positive, say, yeah, they feel it, but they don't care.
Yeah, they're going to rely on anglers' feedback, right?
Yeah.
As time goes on, this is all too new, too fresh yet for anybody to make any huge decisions one way or the other.
Stephen said, and I've said this all along, I think Stephen said there's the combination, you think it's the LiveScope putting them off, but that boat in 35 feet away, 40 feet away from that fish, they see that giant boat there too. They see that silhouette. They hear that trolling motor. They hear the thing spinning around. You know what I mean? They got to hear it all. So we're attributing it to LiveScope only. But meanwhile, we got the $100,000 worth of rig there that they don't see it. They ignore it now. So.
Or they've gotten used to it too. There's the other point to make too. The more people use it, the more they'll acclimatize to it. Same as an outboard motor. I mean, you can run over top of fish with an outboard motor and then stop and fish them and catch them. Like how does that work? Mm-hmm. You can't tell me that an outboard motor going full speed down a lake is any less, is more stealthy than one of these forward-facing sonars.
The lakes that we go to up north for the walleye guys, they leave that motor on all the time. You stop, okay, boys, drop here. All right. It's 7 feet of water. Boom, 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 boom. You're catching up left, right, and center. It's like, what the hell?
Okay, you've spent enough time underwater. You've spent enough time researching. This is what you do for a living. Can you finally dispel something for us? Because I'm one of these morons who thinks less is more. The less noise I can make, the less, introduction of sounds that the fish is not used to, the more apt it's going to bite. And yet Pete makes a great point. Most guides will leave that outboard motor running all day long as they sit on top of a school of walleye and catch them like crazy. You've been down there. You've seen it. Tell us, does an outboard motor spook these fish?
We've actually done some research on that, actually.
I know. Tell us about it.
Yeah. So what we do is we use an underwater microphone, which is called a hydrophone, and we record boat sounds, and then we play them back. We can record a bass boat sound at different speeds, and we can do, pleasure craft, whatever, a tinner with a 9.9 on the back. The reason we do that and don't just run boats around is that allows us to decouple the noise versus the wave action or other things that come along with it. So in terms of the sound, for most fish, they seem not to care a whole lot. It's not like they swim away.
I love it.
They just keep doing their thing.
I love it.
You're killing me.
One of the ways that we did this, because to ask that question, you kind of need to have fish that are in a place that you can watch them. So we've taken bass that are guarding their nests and we've put cameras on them. And then what we do is we play sound at various distances out, and we've done it across different nesting phases because they're not going to go anywhere. Or if they do go somewhere, it's bad for the nest. And so we look to see whether or not boat noise changed their behavior. And the answer is no. They continue to stick around and do their thing, even quite loud and quite close to it. And the only evidence of disruptions from that isn't from the noise, but if you're blasting wakes along the shoreline, which resuspend sediment and just create a turbulent environment for those fish. So the noise doesn't seem to be a big deal. They certainly. We've got access to some private research lakes, and we're going to be doing some more work this coming summer. Those private research lakes, and we do a lot of work at Queen's University Biological Station in Eastern Ontario. And so we have lakes that have never had an outboard motor on them. And so we're going to do some experiments there to see if the fish in those systems respond differently, which will give us a clue as to whether or not fish in other lakes where they're used commonly, whether they've simply learned and gotten used to it, or whether it's just across the board, fish just do not care.
Yeah.
There you go, buddy. Thank you, Stephen, by the way. Thank you. Because now I can keep that motor running because I hate pulling that sumbitch every time. Come on, man. Let me just leave it going. I'm lazy.
It just bothers me. How's that? It bothers me more than the fish, obviously. Thank you, Stephen.
That said, I will shut the motor off every time. I can't imagine pulling up on a spot I want to fish. And if somebody else in the boat's, banging around, if my kids are making too much noise and jumping around, I'll be like, I'll be the first one to shush them. There's something, in my psyche that, partly it's to concentrate, especially when I've just pulled up on a spot, I'm trying to dissect it, hope for a few, quick fish. But it's also the fishing experience. I like some solitude in my life when I'm fishing. I like to disconnect from technology. I don't like to be looking at my screen. So, so I think that's also going to play into overall how things like forward-facing sonar are embraced. If you spend Monday to Friday, 9 to 5, staring at a computer screen, doing it on Saturday, all day Saturday and Sunday as well, even if you're on a boat, might not be the most desirable thing. So it's going to come down to individual choice, individual pocketbooks. And at the end of the day, I don't think it's going to be managers that are going to be making the decision, nor do I think society is going to weigh in on this in the way that I think some folks thought they might. This idea that, the public at large thinks this is unsporting. I frankly don't think that they care. I think it's, even though our social media feeds are filled with this, others are not. Average Jane and Joe are not reading about forward-facing sonar, and they're focused on other things. So, will there be philosophers and folks that study ethics that dig into this? Probably. There's some interesting case studies to explore here. That's not what I do, nor is that what fisheries managers do. Fisheries managers are out there to make sure that resources are managed for the benefit of all. And as long as everybody has the opportunity to get out in the water and catch fish, that's why we invest so much in good shoreline fishing opportunities, so that you don't have to own a boat, so that you can go to the local tackle shop and spend reasonably little money and go out and fish in Ontario and still catch fish. Or if you want to spend big money, you can do that too. To each their own. So.
Yeah. Stephen, has there ever been up until, like right now, this is all about the forward facing and all that, but let's say when side imaging came out, did you have to write up a paper on that saying everybody was worried about, oh my God, like now I'm seeing 100 feet out each side of my boat and I'm seeing fish and I'm seeing rocks and all this? Or is this the first time you've had to write up a paper on electronics and the changing of the electronics?
Yeah, this is the first time. And it's really, we'd been musing about technology more broadly and how basically pushing managers to think proactively instead of having to wait till 10 years later they missed a window to act. In this case, I don't think a window has been missed. I think fisheries managers have been paying attention, before we had forward-facing sonar, even though we called them fish finders, they were really depth sounders, right? And the game change. If you're in the middle of nowhere, you would spot fish on there occasionally, but a decent number of false positives. I used it so I knew how deep the water was, and some of those sort of newer versions that really let us see the habitat. That was exciting, to be able to see a tree, to be able to see a rock pile. How big are those rocks? That even if I don't see fish, that gives me an idea how to fish it. And just because you didn't see fish didn't mean that they weren't there. Forward-facing sonar, of course, is a different ball game. It allows you to see both the habitat and the fish. So yeah, the previous sort of side imaging type sonar, I think we were all oohing and awing over the habitat, but it wasn't. And that I do think makes you be a better angler. But I wasn't seeing any more fish on that type of technology. But again, maybe I'm using it incorrectly.
So then, having said all of that, I'm going to restrict you. You will not have this technology on your personal fishing craft this coming summer. Are you good with that?
Yeah, I can live with that.
All right.
I like to,
because I can't. Yeah. I can't say that. Okay, I cannot say that. Totally, I cannot say that.
I'm still struggling to learn, so I'm not adept enough with it that I am confident. And it also comes down to I just spend so much time in front of screens that I want to engage. It's usually my boys, and trying to find fish to fish for isn't as exciting as fishing. So I go to where I'm quite certain there's fish, even if they might be smaller than what you can find elsewhere. I'll take the sure thing and a pile of panfish any day because it keeps the kids occupied.
What about Carleton University? Are they going to be embracing, or do they have already forward-facing sonar units?
So I have several students in my lab so I would be the one that has to buy it as a researcher. And I actually have money to buy a unit, and we intend to buy one. I've got money to buy more units. My issue is that there's only a few of us that are even remotely capable with them. And, I don't recruit students based on their ability to identify fish, fishable fish with forward-facing sonar. We have people that, do a master's on birds and come to our lab and do fish and so on. And I worry a lot about the technology changing pretty quickly. So we mount it on the front of the boat, and 3 or 4 years down the road, it's more to maintain. It's more to be stolen. So for those reasons, I think we're going in on one unit this coming year, but we're not going all in on all of our boats. We have 7 boats in our lab, and it's just too much. I don't have 7 people that. It would be a summer of nothing but training folks to become proficient, and it's just. We're not there yet. So I'm hoping that for simpletons like me, that the technology will become even easier to use in the future. I'm looking at it, trying to figure out what I need to stand on my head. I'm, zooming in and zooming out. That's still where I'm at. But again, my 14-year-old, you hand him you put he and I beside each other playing a video game. If it's a car game, I'm off the road, or if it's a shooting game, I've got a bullet in the forehead about 3 seconds in, whereas he's usually the last one standing with all the folks he's playing with online. So I think this is generational. So good on both of you. Well done.
Well, I'll tell you, it comes at a cost.
Yeah.
It comes at a cost.
That's exactly what Stephen said.
Yeah.
We started the same way as you did, buddy.
Yeah, you have to spend time at it. And one thing I can sort of throw out there is that sometimes, because the technology is so like out there when you think about it, sometimes we overcomplicate it ourselves. I can see a novice angler using LiveScope for the first time being confused because they're trying to read stuff that's not there.
Yeah.
I can tell you today with our setup, the guessing is pretty much out of it. You know, it's either there or it's not. And most cases it's not. And therefore, what it's done for us is it's given us the strength in believing we have to move. Yes, this has got all the right stuff here. The habitat is perfect. It should be loaded with fish. So if they're not here right now, we don't need to be here either. That's what it's done for us. Whereas before, as you know, Steve, I mean, you can pick out the stuff that should be holding fish. You'll spend days on it.
Yeah.
We don't do that anymore. Yeah. So we spend a lot less time actually angling and more time fishing in the truest sense of the word fishing. We're fishing for areas that has fish. And so consequently what it's done for us, it's reinforced our belief that fish aren't everywhere. You know, you mentioned trollers earlier on. The belief in trolling, it's always been that just get that thing in gear, put your bait out, and just cover water because there's fish out there. We'll get them. We don't do that, right? We don't fish unless there's fish there. Call that good, bad, or ugly. I don't know, but it's changed the way we spend our time on the water. We probably spend more time on the water than we ever did before, but less time angling, if that makes sense at all.
Yeah.
Which
I wonder if guides are starting to see some uptick in business where it's people that I don't want to fish. I just want you to show me how to use this technology. You know, we don't have to go to your lake. You don't have to show me your honey holes. Show me, help me become proficient with this. I'm sure there's a lot of folks doing that now.
We have a very close friend of ours who is a long time novice angler, like a long time. He's been angling all his life as a novice, right? Very day-to-day business keeps him away from water far too much. But anyways, he's intrigued by this technology and he's loaded his boat up with everything that you could possibly buy. But there isn't much more than a week that doesn't go by that he doesn't call me and says, okay, all right. I
think I know who you're talking about now.
You know who I'm talking about. All right, this weekend, next week, next month, you guys need to come up to my place for a couple of days and you need to show me what I'm doing wrong. So, we at first we did that a few times, more than a few times. We'd go in and say, okay, so there's what you're looking for. So you got it? Yeah, I got it. So now 2-3 weeks go by, he's not on the water. Maybe a month goes by, he's not on the water. He goes back on the water, he turns everything on, and he expects it to be right where we left it. You know what I mean? And he gets frustrated with it because he's saying, how come when you guys are here, we see fish all over the place and I can't make it work? So there is that. You have to spend time at it. That's the only way you're going to learn this stuff is to spend time. The more time you spend, the more you're going to learn. Mm-hmm. There's no fast tracking it yet.
Yep.
Now, it may come at some point.
I wonder how.
It may come. They might perfect it so... I'm sure they will. At some point, they'll perfect it where you can eliminate a lot of the guesswork that we had to go through. Now we can look at a screen and say, there's nothing there. Whereas you or anybody else might look at that screen and say, is that, and that's the difference. The time will. So nothing's changed. Like anything else, like a new lure, it's how to use top water baits, how to tie a knot that'll work effectively with your monofilament and your braided line. Like everything, it takes time, and fishing is no different. Thank God it's no different. So
I'll tell you the toughest situation for everybody listening, and Stephen, Angela agree with me on this one, is the toughest scenario still to this day, and you can get good at it, but you really got to learn your screens, is fishing in weeds. If you're fishing in weeds, you can run LiveScope in weeds. Your screen is nuts. It is just looks like a forest. It looks like you're down in the rainforest of Brazil. It's just nuts. But if you just keep your eyes open, all of a sudden there's a little detail here, a little detail there. You see it all of a sudden. Hey, wait a minute. There's something. You know what I mean? So, but that's the toughest scenario.
How many fish has that caught us? How many fish has that
Oh
caught
my
us?
God! It's caught us a lot of fish by
Okay.
knowing.
I got to give that a try.
Oh, it's incredible. And I'll give you a prime example. Is looking for perch. Looking for perch will give you walleye, a pike, bass, and everything else. When you see these little blobs of perch or minnows or whatever, all of a sudden in a weed bed, you're going along, there's 30 feet of nothing, 50 feet of nothing, and then all of a sudden, boom, there's a ball perch. You better be casting in that area because you're probably going to catch a fish. So, but you got to learn how to see that stuff, right? So.
And there's some fine tuning involved too.
Oh my God!
Which unfortunately there is no real playbook on, because every condition calls for a different setting almost. I would think, I'm even of the belief that water temperature and the density of the water makes a difference in the signal. So you got to make those fine little adjustments as you go along. But those are things that you can only learn by being out there.
Oh, by far, yeah, without a doubt.
I'm on the wall.
You have to be on the water watching those screens. Yeah, for sure.
Speaking of time, I'm 2 minutes late for a meeting with one of my students. So
you got it, buddy.
Buddy, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
That was excellent, Stephen. That was excellent.
Great work. Where can folks get connected with this paper? Can they read it somewhere? Can they find out more about
we'll splash it about on the Fishing Canada website. I'll check and see. It should be out and online any day if it's not out there already. So if folks want to pay attention to the Facebook site, and we'll make sure that it's up in a form where everybody can access it. You don't have to sell a kidney to get access to read it.
Awesome.
Thank you, Stephen.
Thanks,
you take
Stephen.
care. Ciao. Dr. Stephen Cooke, Fish Talk with the Doc here on Outdoor Journal.
Going to be adding a LiveScope unit to one of their boats. 107.
Nice.
We got one down. We'll get 6 more.
I'm surprised. I am surprised that they don't have one on there already.
Yeah,
I really
me too.
am.
Me too. It's going to be a world of technology difference for them, I think.
Especially, I didn't ask him, but I'm going to make an assumption that his students are just that. They're young students, right?
I would think so.
They're probably more in tune with this stuff than the Doc is.
Yeah, I wonder. You think they talk about it though? They'd say, "Oh, we got enough money for a LiveScope." Most people say, "Buy it." But you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But some people might say, "No, we got to learn how to use it."
He
Who
brought
knows,
up
right?
all those other good points, though. Theft and damage and time and all that stuff. So.
Yep, for sure.
Anyways,
Sure, you gotta think of all that.
it's interesting that they're now actually spending the time to study it, and
it was
back with
inevitable,
some
right?
conclusions.
And like I asked them that question, side finding did not do this to them. 360 did not do this to them. Nothing of that stuff did this. All of a sudden, boom! Now this forward facing.
And yet, I'm surprised because when we first started looking at side finding sonar, especially in some fisheries. I know the first time I saw it and was like, wow, blown away. Maybe you were there with me. Was out on the Fraser River, sturgeon
With
fishing.
Vic, that's right.
With Vic.
And he was using it for fish. He wasn't using it for anything else.
No. It was every bit as effective as their forward-facing sonar.
Absolutely.
Especially for those
But
big
more
so.
effective because you'd have to have been on perspective mode, which wasn't even invented.
Right.
The first round was forward view.
Right.
You would have missed 90% of those fish that he saw.
But remember those images on the side
My
of that?
God, right?
It looked
there,
like logs.
And you go over and he parked the boat right ahead up current of them. Okay, boys, drop down on that one. So yeah, and that's what Stephen. See, I didn't want to say anything to Stephen, but because he took side imaging to the most basics of levels is that you're looking for structure, you're looking for rocks, you're looking for a weed bed, et cetera, et cetera. But you certainly can see fish on side imaging. There's even
for sure.
like smaller, not sturgeon, but walleye, for instance, bass. You can see them very. You got to know what you're looking for. You can see crappies. We've seen so many schools of crappies on side imaging. So it wasn't. It didn't rock the fishing world like this has. I'm surprised really because it's still to this day side viewing is so cool to do it. It's so effective and so neat. And covering so much water.
Anytime you can have eyes under the surface, it's cool.
It's fun.
I don't care what anybody says. Anytime you can actually see what you're looking for
for
with
sure.
images, it's fantastic. And speaking of seeing,
Speaking of
You
seeing,
see what I'm seeing right here?
Hello. I
See
like.
what I'm seeing?
Come on
I'm
now.
liking
Talk
that.
about technology. Right now, up until Christmas, am I right, Dean? Is this
Yeah,
contest?
that's right.
It's JB Cycle and Marine are giving away a Mercury.
J and B. Come on.
What did I say?
JB.
Well, okay, it's a short form. You put a little hyphen in there, and it's just JB. Probably the B and that would not agree with that, right? The J would be okay, but
Right.
anyways, J and
Exactly.
B. J and B. That's and B.
Thank you.
Cycle and Marine are giving away a Mercury 9.9.
Give me a hell yeah!
See, we just say 9.9, giving away 9.9. Nothing wrong with that.
That's right.
But no, for you,
9.9.
it's a Mercury 9.9.
Outboard motor, not just a motor.
No, it's an outboard
Because if it
motor.
was an inboard motor, it wouldn't be very much power there, would there?
You can win a 4-stroke 9.9 Mercury horsepower motor by going to where? And by the way, that is on no, it's not on fishingcanada.com.
Yeah, it's on fishingcanada.com.
Hell yeah.
It's there too.
Hell
It's
yeah.
everywhere.
That's the only-
Because I saw
that's
it.
the only
I saw it.
place it is.
I saw it someplace on a screen recently. Must have been on
You're
Fishing
watching,
Canada.
you're watching your
fishingcanada.com.
LiveScope. You had it all.
Yeah, I
you
know.
got it
That's what
imprinted in your.
we never even talked about that.
About what?
When is somebody going to come out with the paper saying that looking at those screens on a boat all day long is actually harmful,
It's bad for your posture for sure.
bad for your posture?
Guaranteed.
It actually hurts my neck. Like, when I ice
Guaranteed.
fish, just being hunched up
That's
all day.
why, well, very quick, that's why we went to the fishfindermounts.com guys, and they gave us a nice higher mount. So Ange and I, now with me, I'm looking face onto it. It's like,
weird. Now I
hello
gotta start
there,
looking
everybody. It's talking about getting in your obstructed view. When I'm standing up, I'm looking under it when we're driving the boat.
I don't know how we got onto that because this is
Anyway.
all about J and B Cycle
Correct,
and Marine.
it is, correct.
By the way, I don't know whether you know this or not, but they are Ontario's largest Mercury Princecraft dealership.
I am
Come
aware
on
of that.
now.
I am aware of that.
How do you determine that? By numbers, dollars? I'll have to ask.
Got to be
Rob.
dollars.
Gotta
It has
ask
to
Rob.
be. Well, no, maybe the order number, right? I mean, I've ordered 500 Mercury motors this year and then 300 Princecraft boats this year. Maybe, I don't know.
And they're also the folks who you can lease a boat for the summer from
Hell
for your
yeah.
cottage, right? Like a pontoon boat for the cottage.
Great idea.
Fantastic. Check them out.
I'll tell you what, they are on the cutting
See?
edge. These people.
See, and you give me hell here, but right here I'm reading on the thing. Their site is jbcycle.com.
You can't put the little and symbol in a.
Can't do an ampersand.
URL,
Ampersand and.
Well, see, that's okay. So I'm taking it to the next level.
Oh, you're doing the web version of it.
I'm doing the web
The
version.
URL.
It's
Anne's talking
jbcycle.com.
URLs, everybody, from now on. That's it. You are not URL. Yes, you are.
Anyways, check them out if you're in the market for a boat, motor, trailer, anything outdoors as far as marine is concerned. JB Cycle are your people.
We do have a bonus code from them there as well, which
Oh.
will get you 10 entries into the contest.
On
it right on here?
this particular contest?
Yep.
Well, look at that.
Actually, it'll get you entries on all of them because I think there's a Garmin up there right now too.
Well, here you go.
Hell yeah.
For those of you who've been patiently waiting for this week's code, get your crayon out. It's Sonar, SONAR. It's in upper caps here, so
Yep,
you
all
might want to do
capitals.
that. All capitals, there you go. Just type that into the bonus code section of the contest, and you'll receive, as Dean just told us, not 1, but 10 extra bonus entries.
Give me a hell yeah!
Yeah, that's where the hell yeah.
Ooh, that are it. Wow, that's an exciting episode today, man.
That was good. I like that. Steven's a great guest too, right? He's,
I'd have him on every day if I could.
I think you know what we got to do. You and I have to
Quit?
We have to.
Let him take over? That's probably what.
Well, it wasn't quite what I was thinking, but I was thinking is we should go up and visit Stephen and teach them what we know about our live scoping and all that a day on in the water and say, okay, guys and girls, let's
You know
let's
what?
get together.
Dean,
and,
make a note of that.
Okay.
And,
without fishing, we don't have to go fishing. Just
no.
go out and scoping and showing and looking
offer
and
that
learning.
service to Dr. Cooke, would you?
Yeah, that'd be cool.
We'd love to spend some time with his students. And
Hell, it'd be a good little segment in the Fishing Canada show.
There you go.
You know what I'm saying?
doesn't get any
Come
better
on
than
now.
that. Doesn't get any better than that.
There you go.
On that note, folks, we will let you go. I want to thank you for joining us once again. By the way, I don't say this very often, but if you could, if you like this episode, that is, if you like what we do, maybe you could subscribe or give us a like or do something
Yeah, we don't say that much, do we?
No, we don't.
Because everybody
It's-
always says that. Hey, remember to like and subscribe,
So I
thumbs
actually
up, and
found
blah, blah, blah.
I saw a stat today: 60 or 70% of the people who watch us on YouTube aren't subscribed.
Are not.
Are not. So most people who are watching right now are not subscribed to us.
No.
Wow.
Say it in
people.
soul.
Yeah.
Come
Dean.
on.
Up to 70%.
Wonder why. Wonder what the deal is. They just found this one video sort of thing?
I'm bad for that, actually, of watching things and not subscribing.
Okay, well,
unfortunately.
me too, but that's because I forget or somebody's not telling me. How
Right.
about we change that right now for that 60% of you
Please.
who are out there right now watching this and have enjoyed it? Because if you didn't enjoy it, chances are you're not watching it. So I'm
And they're definitely not gonna subscribe.
I'm speaking to the choir here. I'm preaching. Right. So for those of you 60%ers who have not subscribed yet, let's see if we can move that needle today. Let's just, I know it's a little bit of effort, but let's see if we can move that needle. Subscribe, give us a like, push a button of some kind before you tune out. All right?
Thank you.
Excellent.
Come on now.
On behalf of the entire Outdoor Journal team, Bova over there, who's waiting for us to get off so we can go to lunch. Nick is at school today.
No
That's
way.
good. Yeah. And Dean,
Nice.
our illustrious
now.
producer. He's Peter Bowman. I'm Angelo Barrow. Thanks for joining us. Talk to you soon. This episode of Outdoor Journal Radio has been brought to you in part by the Invasive Species Centre, protecting Canada's land and water from invasive species. Freedom Cruise Canada, rent the boat, own the memories. J&B Cycle and Marine, your home for all things power sports, boats, and equipment. And Sail, the ultimate destination for your outdoor adventures.